Hello, good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Ravens Recap. We are here to talk about your brand new shiny number one seed in the AFC, following the Ravens' 34-20 win over those horrible Cincinnati Bengals and the Eagles' win over the Chiefs last night. The Baltimore Ravens now sit atop the AFC at 8-3. We will recap that Thursday night game against the Bengals, which already feels like a lifetime ago. We'll look at some of the implications coming from that and wrap with a quick look ahead to this weekend's game against the Chargers before the Ravens take a well-deserved break. But before we get into that, I do want to touch on the fact that a few of us were living the high life this time last week. We were in lofty company. We had our own sort of mini buy last week, so apologies for not running a space. But we hit the big time and were called in at the 11th hour to appear on the prestigious UK Ravens podcast. A couple of reflections on that. Rich, how are you feeling about how we did there, but also how are you feeling about being back in the basement this week on Ravens Recap?
Well, I know my place, so very happy to be back on the recap. It's good fun. I've done a couple of Ravens related podcasts before. Obviously not the UK Ravens version. I felt like we held our own. We had good chat. I don't think anyone said anything majorly outrageous or embarrassing. So yeah, I would advise everyone to sort of go on and tell their why a Raven story, because it's not going to be as rubbish as mine.
No, I think we did ourselves proud. I think, and actually seeing you guys live as we recorded it on video was a treat, because I don't get that on a Tuesday night normally. So actually seeing a little window into your lives as you contemplate your Ravens opinions was a rare treat for me, and maybe one we'll never experience again, because who knows when injuries will plague the podcast A team like they did last week. So without any further ado, disruption, or detour, let's stop talking about ourselves and jump into this sort of weird game. Brilliant in terms of how it ended up, but fractured and disjointed, and that's just Joe Burrow's wrist. So let's start, unfortunately, where we have to, which is the sort of saddest news from our perspective coming out of that game. Clearly being Mark Andrews, injured not just for a very long time, but really early in this game. And it felt like it's something that might have been a momentum shifter had it not then later shifted the other way. I don't particularly want us to get lost in the weeds of the tackle or hip drop or intent. Because it was nearly a week ago now, and I think enough water has passed under the bridge. But also because I don't think it's a useful conversation. But let's reflect more, I think, on the loss of Mark Andrews. Perhaps trying to think about what the replacement looks like, what fills that void. Is it the combination of Likely and Kohler, or are we actually genuinely in a place where we can lean towards the wide receivers to pick up that slack? So I don't normally like to drop on people, but given that Adam and Ollie had a week off last week because we weren't hosting, let's jump over to you guys straight off. So Adam, where are we on Mark Andrews, the injury, the gap, and potential replacements? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so, it doesn't really need to be said that he's going to be a huge loss. I think luckily from what Harbs has said, maybe it's not quite as bad as we all kind of thought it might be. And not necessarily thinking that he'll come back. I think, we kind of touched on the WhatsApp group that personally, I don't think he should be coming back realistically to play any more games this year, but at least we know we'll have a full off season and he'll be fit and raring to go for next season. But in regards to where the replacements look, I do think that the tight ends will step up. I think that a lot of his share of targets will go to the three guys we have already in the team, and Kohler and Likely are likely to take a lot of those from him. I would like to see, is it Fokalev, is that how you pronounce his name? Step up now and take a bit. He was a bit of a preseason hero, and hopefully he'll get a share. But yeah, I think that likely he'll take a lot of the slack of Andrews and go from there. I do think that the wide receivers have to step up a little bit and more so in their key downs. Whereas it used to always be Andrews over the middle for 7, 8, 9, 10 yards when we were struggling. Maybe that OBJ or someone needs to be a little bit tougher. Need to take those routes that they maybe don't want to take and take a bit of a hit. But it's a loss, isn't it? There's no getting around that.
No, it absolutely is. Any team that loses an All-Pro is going to suffer for it. But one that particularly has been so reliant on that guy in the passing game over Lamar's entire career. I shared in the WhatsApp the other day that the statistics of Lamar's targets over his career to date, and he is just in a different stratosphere in terms of pass catchers in this offense since he joined the league and since Lamar joined the league. So it is an enormous pair of shoes to fill. So, Ollie, same question to you. Where do you think? Are you confident that likely Kola and possibly Travis Vokalek can step up and make a difference?
No, probably not. Not to say, massively defeatist. It's a massive undertaking, isn't it? And I think I wouldn't want to sort of put that pressure on some players, especially likely. I think we've seen he's still somewhat developing. I don't know what I don't know much about Kola myself, and Vokalek nothing for me. But I suppose I think Rich, you might know more about this than me as to whether Kola is a better run blocker than Likely. I still think a lot of our game runs goes through the run game, and if we can get that and possibly Pat Ricard to help out in that aspect, then that's where we look to that. And again, in terms of the receiving, I think maybe we need one of our bigger guys to step up. I mean, probably call me crazy, and I'm probably going to regret saying this, but could we see a bit more of Nelson Aguilar across the middle and in a short and intermediate using his bigger body? I wouldn't want to put too much on Zay, much more than there already is. But I still think we're in a not in an amazing place. I still think we're in a good place without him, and I suppose it's good in a way that this happened following the trade deadline. Maybe I could have seen a situation where we'd have all the fans clamoring to give up a second round pick for someone like Zach Ertz or something like that, and I don't think that's what we need at this time. So yeah, relatively positive.
I don't know if anyone had. Maybe we'll see more of Nelson Aguilar on their Ravens bingo card this season when we signed him in the off season. But I think he is on that list of guys that you think he could step up and make a difference. Rich.
Yeah, so I heard my name called by Ollie, and apparently I'm now the tight end expert. So I'll give it a go. So as I understand it, Vokalek in college was known primarily as a blocker. So possibly he'll be able to show that if he can get himself on the field. And obviously in the preseason, he also showed a really good ability to make some catches. So maybe we've been lucky and found a rare one, but probably shouldn't be relying on the undrafted rookie. Now, the thing is, in his snaps this year, which haven't been many, Kolar has definitely made some highlight blocks, and his comparison was basically a kind of Mark Andrews light. Was a sugar-free Mark Andrews. So So hopefully he can do that. He does look like he's bulked up a fair amount. Um, and then I think obviously we then have Likely, who is an absolute menace as a yards after catch merchant if we can get him in the right position. I think we probably have to assume that um, Ricard might see an uptick in snaps. Obviously, he's been doing a great job, and he can definitely be that blocker in the tight end position. And yeah, just to really um, move well with the Aguilar, perhaps we can see more of Aguilar. I mean, we definitely have the wide receivers to have more 3 or even 4 wide receiver sets. So obviously you can never replace Andrews, but I think hopefully it's not going to upset the offense too much.
No, I think if you compare this year to last, and if we were talking about a situation in which we were suddenly relying on the ghost of Deshaun Jackson to step up and lead this offense as a receiving threat, then we probably would be following each other off the cliff and saying that's us done. That is the end of this passing game. Unless we can run for 400 yards every game, we're probably not going to win very many. But we are in a different world now. We're in a world actually where Mark Andrews is not the highest yardage receiver in this team through through this part of the season. Zay Flowers has more yards. Admittedly, Mark Andrews has significantly more touchdowns than everybody else. So that probably more than anything else is the gap that we need to think about filling, because as we all know, and as basically everyone in the NFL knows, when it comes to red zone, when it comes to those got to have it type moments, there's one number that Lamar's looking for, and it's 89. So that replacing that impact, I think, is where we will have the greatest difficulty. But with the emergence of a couple of the guys that we'll come on to talk about shortly, and with them finally starting to get on the scoreboard, there's probably more cause for optimism now than there would have been this time last year. So I think it's probably a case of we all want to see Mark Andrews again. We're all hoping that everything heals up as best it can. But if we don't see him again this season, we have to accept that that's for the best. Adam.
Yeah, I think one point that I forgot to mention before was we've spoken about this quite a lot in the last sort of few weeks, really, that the playbook probably hasn't been fully opened yet, and that given our horrible run of games after the bye week, potentially is when the playbook starts to get dusted off a little bit, and we start to delve towards the back of it. And maybe actually the timing of this maybe isn't horrific, because I am sure there are plenty more plays to see. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've seen an awful lot of catching out the backfield. And potentially this is where we now start to look at where we can utilise them a little bit more. And as much as we've kind of moved away a little bit from it, but in the end zone is where we are going to take a huge hit. Whereas we've got probably or possibly the best quarterback in the NFL for creating some space and getting into the end zone himself. So that isn't going to go away. His threat, the running backs are starting to up their game as well. So it might not be completely noticeable as much as we are kind of hating on that it is going to be noticeable, because maybe we get a little bit more inventive.
And I think that's another thing that we can absolutely look at this season and be more confident of than last season. I think if we still had Greg Roman, the likelihood of us saying maybe we can just get a bit more creative with play calling is probably not something that would have come up in this conversation. We probably would have just said, I think what we'll do is keep doing the same things that we've been doing and hope that they continue to work without Mark Andrews, as opposed to actually we feel quite confident that Todd Monken's got some tricks left in his bag that he hasn't shown anyone yet. And maybe those tricks work just as well with Isaiah Likely as they do with Mark Andrews. Or maybe Pat Ricard turns into the receiving threat he's always dreamt of being, and we've always dreamt of him being, and he becomes an absolute out in the flats merchant for 50, 60 yards a game. I'm all for it if that happens to come about. But it does feel like one of those things that in that moment it felt catastrophic and it felt derailing and it felt season ending. But actually, on reflection, and now nearly a week later, it feels like it's a blow, but it's a blow that's possible to be taken as opposed to a fatal one. So we'll choose to progress with a sense of optimism and a sense of hope that's perhaps uncharacteristic for Ravens fans following an injury like that. And part of that optimism, as we've alluded to there, is coming from these wide receivers. It's coming from the fact that actually there are at least four guys there who seem perfectly capable of getting the ball in their hands and doing something with it, or getting open into a space where Lamar can hit them. Let's start with Odell, and this is it's becoming a bit of a running thread of talking about Odell, but we've in the last few weeks shifted quite spectacularly from are we getting value for money just because he's a walking DPI into actually he's a proper receiver again. He's an actual guy, and I don't know whether anyone's going to jump in and correct. I've not seen an enormous amount about his shoulder. I've not seen anything about the ramifications of another Logan Wilson tackle, and I'm taking that to be relatively good news. But 4 for 116 in this game, and all of that explosiveness and all of that nous and all of that creativity just seems to be bubbling out of the top again. So it seems like we have something, injury God's willing, we have something there that could continue to be really exciting and still only get better. Rich, where are you on OBJ in this game?
Right, sorry. The washing machine has just decided to be really loud. So let me just shut that door. Um, yeah, no. Well, I'm really happy where OBJ is because I'm pretty sure I said a couple of weeks ago that he was definitely our wide receiver one, and and that was controversial. So very happy to see that he has actually become wide receiver one. I mean, I think he's he's everything at the moment that we need him and want him to be. We're obviously paying him a lot of money. There's a question mark about whether we are going to be able to re-sign him next year. Like he's just, you know, um, I mean, I don't really know what to say. Like he's doing exactly what we want him to do. He got 100 yards of the game, um, scored the touchdown. So yeah, brilliant. Like long may it continue.
Absolutely. And I'll just pause quickly for a welcome to those that have joined recently. As a reminder for things, more than welcome to sit and listen in, more than welcome to just tweet along. But also, if you want to jump in and say something, the mic is open to absolutely everybody. So please feel free. It's not a closed shop, it's an open forum for everybody. So feel free to request the mic. We're currently talking about Odell Beckham Jr. And I suppose the only negative from his performance was probably the worst offensive holding call of all time, to negate that Zay Flowers touchdown. But Ollie, where are you on OBJ, both in this game but also sort of last couple of weeks?
I feel like he's really growing into the role, isn't he? I think there were concerns, and I believe Rory may have voiced it on the WhatsApp. You know that we were just paying him to be an overpaid sort of wide receivers coach, really, and it wasn't really offering much in the games. And I think as he's coming on, he's building more and more. He's getting the ball a lot more, and whether that's because Lamar's continuing to force it to him or not, I think we moan if he does, and it goes badly, but when it goes well, we love it. So I'm relatively happy with him.
Yeah, it has shifted. It absolutely has felt like it's shifted from that he was a nice toy to get Lamar to sign into, oh, actually no, he can catch and run still. He actually is still a lot faster than we thought he might be. Welcome in, Rory. You've chosen to request the mic on an OBJ and also probably the mention of your name. So come on in.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Roddy got that from. Maybe I say a lot of shit in the WhatsApp group, so I might have said something like that. I did say on the space a couple of weeks ago, that we, I think Jeff Rebeck in one of his articles said, actually no, it was Jeff Rebeck on the Athletic podcast when he appeared on Kiefer and the Beats, where he said, you're signing OBJ to make plays in November, December, January, and hopefully February. Whatever he does in September, you're not too fussed about. So it is very pleasing that he's coming along and he just looks healthy. He took that slant, I think it was against the Browns, and he just blew past them, didn't he? And that looks like old OBJ. So it's definitely promising, isn't it? Very, very good signs going forward. On Andrews and his injury, we're certainly in better shape to withstand it this year rather than in years previous because of the depth that we now have at wide receiver.
Yeah, for sure. And with the trajectory that OBJ is on, and the trajectory that the next guy that will come on to talk about, Rashad Bateman, is on, it feels like things are trending in absolutely the right direction. It's another of those games from a passing perspective, and I've mentioned this a few times, and it's getting to the point where it's no longer noteworthy, but there were 10 different guys targeted in this game. And I think it comes back to that conversation about missing Mark Andrews, in that it's missing one guy, but clearly there are 9 players at least that we feel somewhat comfortable pushing the ball towards. And OBJ paced everybody by a reasonable margin. He was on 7 with Zay coming in second on 4. But you know it seems as though there's enough confidence right across this offense that we can push the ball to people. We don't need to be targeting Mark Andrews 10 times a game anymore.
So this is almost as if OBJ being a man in his 30s, it has taken him a couple of games to get used to after not playing competitive ball for a while, and looks like he's fully got the rust off now.
Are we approaching a point where he is value for money, or are we still not? Are we still not there yet? Are we still a few big games away from value for money, or are we approaching it?
Yeah, I think for me, he's not quite got there yet, just purely on we haven't seen those stat lines to kind of prove it. But I think as the weeks go on, I'm more and more happy that some of the extras that you get from OBJ. I mean, he quite clearly loves being around the team. He looks happy. He looks like he's dancing around and getting involved. I'm sure he's great to have around training, and you know, it'll do say the world of good playing with someone like him, and even someone like Aguilar and and the others that have been around the league a long time. It'll do them good to have a fresh pair of eyes and a fresh sort of way of learning and a bit of healthy competition, which we clearly haven't had. So he's not quite there, but I'm certainly a lot happier than I was even maybe a month ago with the amount of money that is getting spent on him and and the amount of money that we're going to spend next year to not have him. Um, I think he's getting to the stage now where I'm happy with the signing, and he's a good signing. I think value for money wise, we did pay a chunk out, so I think we still need a few more really important touchdowns and or catches in key times to say sort of value for money. But I'm definitely happy.
And now probably more than ever, he's on that list of. He's probably near the top of that list of guys you're expecting to step up and contribute. And if he continues that trajectory towards close to where he has been before, I don't think we'll necessarily see a new high in OBJ's career or anything like that. But if we get anywhere close to being what he has been in stops and starts over his career, then he's probably your best bet for filling that void of Mark Andrews. But so one of those guys who I think you're right, Adam, is benefiting from exposure to and the experience of Odell Beckham is Rashad Bateman, and it's another guy that we've been talking in this group about for a few weeks. You know, we've been talking about a big play here, a big block there. I think there was that play where he ripped the ball out of a DB's arms, and all these kind of crunch plays that felt like he was moving towards becoming a bigger impact player in this offense, all culminated in one beautiful moment during the course of this game. Rory.
Just want to jump in. There's some breaking news. Pepe Williams has been designated to return.
Ooh.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, it's, on the scale of breaking news, it's
Pretty low.
it's pretty low, but it's breaking news all the same. It's breaking news all the same. So it's information that none of us knew before you said it, or at the very least, it's information that I didn't know before you said it. So there you go. That constitutes breaking news as far as I'm concerned, even if the world is in no way different after that news than it was before. But thank you, Rory. Foz, you've requested the mic. Were you looking to come in on Rashad Bateman? Were you looking to come in on OBJ? Where's your head at?
It was to continue the OBJ chatter. I saw something on Twitter shortly afterwards, and there was a few people giving OBJ a bit of stick about losing a bit of pace, and he's not like he was. He's not got that turn of pace that he had at the Giants, or and tweets along those kind of lines. But it we're like 6 years on. The guy's knees have been on backwards. He doesn't have an ACL, and I think we may need to just limit our expectations somewhat as to what we can expect out of him long term. I've always been of the mindset that he's worth his money first and foremostly because Lamar signed the contract, and that's what we needed. And the wide receivers and running backs and all these positions, potentially, unless they're going to stick around forever, they're going to come and go. But Lamar is a guy that we want to place our money on for the next decade or so. So getting him to stick around was massive. So anything beyond that is, in my opinion, a bonus. There's also, the train of thought that we're not getting him for now, we're getting him for the playoffs anyway. So again, anything that he does produce now is a bonus because he's really going to shine towards the end of the year, and it's looking like that might actually be a possibility because of the way he's progressing through the year. It's potentially coincidental because, as somebody said earlier, he's going to need to warm up, and he's been away for a little while. Or it could be in part deliberate. I know some sports tend to train their players up so they're kind of hitting full fitness at crucial stages of the season when it's gonna really matter, and certainly the first few weeks of the season is a nice incline. So Yeah, OBJ for me is he's outdoing himself as far as I'm concerned. He's showing more pace than I expected, regardless of what some talking heads might think. His contributions have been important. He's great for the spirit of the camp. Lamar clearly absolutely adores him, so I can't knock him.
No, it's getting harder and harder to, isn't it? It is getting harder and harder um, to chip away at the signing. And as someone a couple of years older than OBJ, I can absolutely attest to the fact that I'm not as fast now as I was 6 years ago. I probably don't think I've ever been as fast as OBJ, even on his slowest day. I'm sure in the couple of weeks after his horrendous injury, he could probably still outsprint me. But there absolutely is something in the fact that when you get to 30 plus, things do slow down and things take a little bit longer to get going again. Um, but you can see already in either big moments in games or in big games, he's one of those guys that turns up. And we saw it. His last game before signing with us was that Super Bowl where he seemed to be on course for Super Bowl MVP. Is all these things that when the lights are shining, he seems to show up and take things to a different level. So I think all of those that have mentioned this narrative of we're getting him ready for well into December and January, I think that's absolutely right. And if he stays at this level in December and January, I think we'll be very, very happy. If the upward trajectory continues and actually we see even more than this in December and January, then goodness me, we're in for some fireworks when we have those games against the 49ers, the Dolphins, and et al. Later in the season. So I think we've got a lot to be excited about for that signing. It's not just a nice keepsake to keep Lamar around. So back over to Rashad Bateman then. I mean, stats wise, again, we're talking about a day that box score not the single most impressive day you're ever going to see because it is 2 targets, 1 reception for 10 yards, albeit that reception was for a touchdown. But I think it was the nature of it was something that in and of itself shows a lot about him and perhaps more importantly, a lot about his relationship with Lamar. We're always looking in those situations, and it's already been alluded to here, those situations where plays break down, Lamar's running, no one really knows which way he's going, whether he's going to take off and run with it or whether he's looking for somebody. Um, but a really nice piece of work from Rashad Bateman to pull it back, get back inside, and get pretty much to somewhere that only Lamar can find him and gets himself enough separation from a DB to get himself open in the end zone. It's another tick in the box of the things we wanted to be seeing from Rashad Bateman to start thinking that maybe he's fully back. So um, I suppose my question, the only one that remains, is there anything else that we want to see from Rashad Bateman before we really start to buy in and say, actually, yeah, he's legitimately part of this offense again. He's properly here, and it's now just a case of ramping up volume. Anyone got any Rashad Bateman takes for me?
I don't mind jumping in. I've been really impressed with his releases off the line of scrimmage, just cooking his guys, getting separation, and now he just really needs the volume to see if he can bring in the passes, get the chains moving, and become. I'm not sure we're ever going to have like a a leader of the wide receiver room. I think they'll all kind of share the load, but I do think he's due a breakout of a 6, 7, 8 catch performance, a touchdown, and getting up to close to 100 yards. That's kind of what I want to see.
I think for me with Rashad, something maybe it's just me that's seen it, or maybe I'm imagining it. But it seems to me that over the past couple of weeks, he's playing what I would term he's playing more nasty. He seems to be a lot more like aggressive in his fighting for the ball. He seems to be a lot more um, like when he's still fighting for the ball at the DB's hands. He feels like he's like all in, really aggressive. That's something I really value in a wide receiver, and I think we're seeing that a lot from him. And I think there is going to be a game this season where he will massively go off because they're now having to guard everyone else, and I think he now is a full part of our offense.
That the turning point with regards to the being more aggressive was that catch. I can't remember what game it was. I think it was pre-London. It could have been against the Steelers, but I might be wrong. But Lamar kind of underthrew him, and he really fought through the contact, made the grab. And I think in the week after that, I just said that's a chemistry building catch. That's a catch that earns you more targets and more trust. So, and yeah, he's starting to look a little bit more like the Bateman that we saw in the first 2 or 3 weeks of last season, and in his rookie year, where every catch he made was going for a first down.
And he's another guy that's kind of sneakily fast. We were talking about it in respect of Odell Beckham. That the speed at which he seems to be able to get the ball and disappear off. Rashad Bateman absolutely has that in his locker. That 75-yard slant against the Dolphins attests to that. So he's absolutely got these things that he's perfectly capable of doing. So that, coupled with the opportunity that arises following the unfortunate Mark Andrews news, for every cloud there is a silver lining, and perhaps that silver lining is that those people that are looking for more to eat may be about to get fed. So I think there's real cause for optimism that actually across this group, and we've not touched on Zay Flowers, who should have had a 60-yard touchdown in this game. But we've got three guys there that you can absolutely look at and say, this guy is capable of having that big game. We've got three guys there that are capable of going over 100 yards. Three guys that we're getting more and more confident feeding the ball to. So that feels like uncharted territory for us in recent times, and it's a nice problem to have.
And you've also then got Nelly as well, who made a great play on Thursday night, because I'm not sure if the ball was going to be picked off, but it certainly got deflected and he housed it. Just a really, really solid play for someone that I think we were all a little apprehensive about when we announced the signing.
Yeah, it's a great point. And watching the sort of slow-mo replays of it was so funny, because there's like a tangible point where you can see that he realizes that the ball's coming, and there's this sort of mix of panic and excitement across his face. And I think it shows the fine margins, doesn't it? Because there was one of those against the Browns that goes up in the air, and who comes down with it? What's a Browns player? This one goes up in the air, lands right in the breadbasket of Nelson Aguilar, and off he goes. So it does show those fine margins, but you're absolutely right. The presence of mind and the quick hands to get on it and keep in stride was very impressive. Adam.
Yeah, I wasn't going to jump in on the Bateman one, because kind of my answer to are we getting enough out of him, I think would have been no. I like a lot of what he's been doing recently, but I think certainly probably up to London, I thought that he wasn't great, and he obviously had that play where he didn't bother turning up in London. That was rubbish. But I think clearly he had his injury last year, and it's really hard to judge at what point he's got back to fitness. But so far, I don't think I have seen enough out of Bateman. I was really high on him, and and certainly there's been lots of sparks throughout his time with us that I've thought, yeah, this guy's good, and we've kind of hit on that first round wideout that we just never do. But um, but yeah, I don't know. I've not been loving him this season. I think he's got plenty more work to do. Um, and for me, Aguilar's been the one that's been the best to take over some of these ones, some of these snaps. If it's not going to Zane, it's not going to Andrews. I've been liking what Aguilar's done, and I think he's made some really good catches, and for me, has moved ahead of Bateman in who I would want to throw the ball to if I was stood there being Lamar.
Which I think was a part of the narrative when Aguilar signed it. It felt like in the immediate aftermath, a lot of the discussion felt like, oh my god, that's our wide receiver addition for the season. We are toast. We are done. This is all the classic things that we do. We're going to suddenly thrust Nelson Aguilar into wide receiver one and hope for the best. Whereas actually we're now talking about him as a kind of four with upside, maybe a three, and he's excelling. We'll ignore the onside kick that he completely whiffed a couple of weeks ago, but um, he's showing flashes of a guy that again can make big plays. I think is he second on the receiving touchdowns list behind Mark Andrews with three on the season. So he's made some big catches, some really nice catches in big moments. So I think it's got all the hallmarks of quite a shrewd addition, albeit one at the time that there might have been a little bit of eye rolling and forehead slapping when we announced it. We're looking to come back in, Adam.
Yeah, well, just to follow up on you, really, to say, yeah, when we made that signing, and we didn't know how long Bateman would be back. Obviously, Zay wasn't on the books then, and neither was OBJ. You're thinking, great, that isn't the flashy free agency move that we would have wanted. But I think in that role of that fourth receiver, I think as you said, he has excelled. I think that probably is where he's fitting best. And maybe he knew that. Maybe he didn't necessarily want to admit that. But coming onto a team where if he gets two catches for 25 yards, that's probably a decent game for him. But he does a lot more than that a lot of the time. Some of his routes that he runs, and we've seen him make some plays, and I think essentially as well, the other thing is teams have to cover him. Teams can't just let him fly, because he's proven that he can run the routes, he can catch the ball, he's not a mug. He has to have some coverage on him, and teams can't cover all our players. So that is a really good, strong point for me, that he can't just be forgotten about, which, in the past, you simply wouldn't bother marking our wideouts, would you?
So touching briefly on the run game, it was sort of as successful as ever. Gus the Bus just doing what he seems to do at the minute, which is receivers get us down somewhere in and around the 10 and shorter, and Gus barrels it over the line once, twice, or more in an afternoon. So yeah, he's having a stellar season in terms of the touchdown statistics, but it's testament to the hard work coming in from elsewhere to get us down into those positions. The one thing I did want to touch on very briefly is I was looking at some of the snap counts earlier on, because I was kind of interested in where we were ending up in terms of we've talked a lot about Keaton Mitchell as every conceivable Ravens oriented content has over the last few weeks. But I was really interested to see that Keaton Mitchell had his biggest day from a pure snap count perspective, by far, almost double his previous high. He was out there 24 snaps, which is 36% of the offense's total snaps this week, and actually Gus was only out there for one more. So that, coupled with Justice Hill's numbers being well below that, are we sort of at that point now where we're saying actually Gus and Keaton are the 1 and 2? Is that where we're at? Foz, I mean, you've been the Keaton truther since day one. Are you sort of locking him in? He's the 1B to Gus's 1A right now.
I think they're setting him up to be that way. Quite a while ago, I mentioned what people were talking about him struggling, and he couldn't find the gaps. So what we needed to do was basically put the gaps in front of him, and when we did that, he's been flying, scoring touchdowns and making plenty of yards. He's suddenly become a superstar. I'm not very impressed with Gus Edwards because I predicted that Keaton Mitchell would score 2 touchdowns and then Taylor Swift would make her way to Baltimore to take his hand. And now, thanks to Gus's selfishness, I'm not going to get to see Taylor Swift hanging around M&T Bank, and Keaton Mitchell, his stats are a little bit lower than they should be. And I forgot what the original point I was going to make was. Keaton Mitchell, yeah, he's great, isn't he? We're going to stick with him. It's going to be a nice 1-2 punch. You've got the plodder and you've got the lightning bolt, and both are going to work perfectly well. Gus Edwards is exactly the sort of person that you're going to want when you're first and goal. You're a yard away, or first and inches, should I say, and he's just going to barrel his way over. But he is also perfectly capable of a surprise 35-yard run. I can't remember. It was Ian that was saying that Keaton is definitely a tell because of his blocking. And he's mostly on passing plays. Sorry, hang on. So they expect him to be on the run because he hasn't done anything else. So it's a bit of a tell when Keaton is on the field, that it's going to be a run. Well, the disallowed Zay Flowers touchdown. I don't know if anybody remembers, but Keaton Mitchell, it really showed his pace actually, because Flowers was away, and then Keaton Mitchell was just he just flew past Zay to start getting the blocks in, and he was pushing the guy out, and I was really impressed by that. And that could be something that we take advantage of going forward, using both of those two together in that kind of way. Get Keaton out there; he's faster than anybody, and he can already be out there blocking and almost sort of digging a channel for your little superstar.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the question about Rashad Bateman ticking the boxes to say, what more do we want to see to fully buy in and say he's back? That was the one lingering question with Keaton Mitchell, was can he be out there sustainably on pass plays so that he's not a complete giveaway. He's not that guy that lets you know we're handing him the ball or Lamar's keeping it because he can't do anything else. Suddenly, if we're getting looks to say that he can, even if it's not necessarily stand there and block an edge rusher, but if it is get up in space and help out Zay by blocking a safety or blocking a cornerback, then yeah, he's absolutely got some fight in him, and that's very exciting. So I wasn't necessarily planning to come to this question, but it's popped into my head, so I'll throw it out, and I'm gonna start picking on people for this one. So apologies in advance, but Ollie, I'm gonna come to you. we're talking about Gus, we're talking about Kit Mitchell. The obvious sort of undertone question is probably where does this leave J.K. Dobbins? Obviously, contract is up end of this year, so he could just walk and go somewhere else. Do you think there's a world in which we keep kicking the tires and say, let's have another year? If the finances work out, see what you've got, and maybe make this a three-headed monster with Gus, Keaton, and JK? Or are you thinking we're probably moving on? Let someone else take the gamble.
Well, I think that would make it a four-headed monster with Justice Hill as well. But unless it's a very team-friendly deal, I mean, I don't know if I see a place for him. And it depends on how quickly and how well he comes back. Is he? I mean, I can't quite recall the details of his injury at the moment, so I honestly haven't thought about him recently. But is he going to be back to full capacity, or is there always going to be a bit of lingering doubt with him? So one stat I did see actually today, based on our run game, I think many of you may have seen it. I think we've been ranked as the third highest DVOA run of all time through 11 weeks of the season, which I think is crazy. What that means, who knows? But I know Americans love weird stats like that.
I have no idea what DVOA means. All I know is being like high up in it is a very good thing. On JK, it was a torn Achilles that he had. I think we might be open to bringing him back, but if so, it will be because nobody else has signed him coming towards training camp. I had a sneaky thought about JK, could have been yesterday. I think he screams Eagles. I think he might land on the Eagles like free agency next year for like something like a vet min contract, some maybe a little bit more. And if he's healthy, I'm sure he'd be thrilled to be running behind that O line. Just a random thought I had.
And be there next Jay Ajayi.
And just not. Yeah, and you know for a fact he would have his best year, and it would be just the most infuriating thing of all time. Yeah, I can absolutely see that.
It just screams of a Harry Roseman move, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. But I'll try not to think. I wish I hadn't asked the question now because that's depressed me. The thought of it. Adam, give me something to cheer me up.
No, I can't. I can stop talking though. But no, I think my point would be, I think I don't see a world where JK is back, unfortunately. And that's not necessarily because we don't want it. I do think that we would want him back. I just think that we are going to be so close with a cap that there's in around we're paying Lamar a lot of money. Obviously we've got Roquan tied down to a lot of money. We've got some other big hitters in there as well. We do have, inevitably we've got a question about the O-line and who's going to be lining up where. And I just think even if we get a good team-friendly deal from him, can we pay four people in that position? Maybe if we get kind of trade, I don't know what the cut value is like for those guys, but if we get a trade on Justice Hill, for instance, for seventh round picks or something, to take him off our hands, then maybe. But I don't know. I don't know now whether the team would just say, we love you, JK, but we can't trust your injuries, and we're going to roll with what we've got.
Yeah, it hasn't. The recovery hasn't seemed like the borderline miraculous Aaron Rodgers style turnaround. So either he's not taking all the same therapies that Aaron Rodgers is, or as is becoming a growing conspiracy theory, Aaron Rodgers' injury was never actually as serious as it was alluded to be at the very beginning, and that's why he's able to recover at a seemingly superhuman rate. Rory.
Yeah, this Aaron Rodgers bullshit is just all for show, all to get his name in the headlines. Just leave me alone with all that.
Done. Will do. So let's jump over to the other side of the ball. Then I've kind of, I feel like I've just referred to it as solid but unspectacular because I think it all has to be put in its context of it was Jake Browning for half of the game, um, albeit scored just sort of garbage time touchdown to Jamar Chase for pretty much the only thing Chase did in the game. Um, I'm not taking any of this narrative that the Burrow injury is on us. I think it's been utterly ridiculous. The suggestion that it's on us. Some of the quotes from Roquan taken out of context and suggesting that we've gone out to intentionally hurt anyone, I think is ridiculous. Um, but I think solid overall in that a lot of the issues we were talking about from the Browns game in terms of tackling and finishing and just getting guys to the ground mostly went away. It was another 5 sacks, 5 different guys getting them. It's another of those games where we're not necessarily looking at it as stellar. We're not necessarily looking at one or two guys as unbelievable performance of the week type situations. But actually, it's another game where everybody played their part, everybody did their job, shut down the guys they needed to shut down, got into Burrow's space, got into Browning's face in the second half, and just made things incredibly difficult. So, Rich, we've not heard from you for a little while. Where were you at defensively on this game?
It's quite difficult to say because obviously, while Burrow was still in the game was quite close, and so you kind of think, well, I hate to say it, but that is a top tier quarterback. I felt we were containing Burrow, but probably weren't dominating their offense. And then obviously when Browning comes in, obviously our defense did kind of gain ascendancy, but you'd be worried if they didn't. So look, we know that when they put it together, we've got a great defense. The defensive line has been much better than we all gave it credit for at the start of the season. And yeah, not to go into those guys because we have discussed them, but we've essentially got guys playing at an all pro level in the front seven. We've got at least two guys in Madabuke and Roquan. We've got multiple other Pro Bowlers within that front seven, and obviously the defensive backs have been solid, not spectacular. Apart from obviously Geno Stone's predilection for catching interceptions, so we know our defense is incredibly solid, and I'm not taking too much from the game just because it is Browning at the end of the day. So yeah, roll over the win. Defense hasn't been tested too much. On to a difficult game against the Chargers, isn't it? Next, and that is going to be the best quarterback in Herbert that we've seen for a little while.
Well, I think Gardner Minshew would like a word on that one, but no, you're probably right, just about. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. It's hard to get too high about the defensive performance just because it was Jake Browning for so long and it was effective and it did all the things it needed to do. But maybe this is what we need. Maybe we need some of these games where it's just fine, and it just does what it needs to do. And maybe people will stop looking at Mike Macdonald, and people will stop thinking of him as head coaching candidates in the not too distant future. So any other sort of defensive takeaways? I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about the skill position guys on offense. We spend a lot of time talking about running backs and wide receivers, but I think we have in the past we've spent a long time talking about Geno Stone when he's warranted it, and we spent a long time talking about Justin Madubuike when he's warranted it. But this just felt like one of those games where it's like, okay, cool, did your job, let's move on to the next one. But any hot takes or standout notes from this defensive performance last week?
I think Brandon Stevens deserves a shout out, going toe to toe with Chase. Obviously, Chase got the touchdown, but that was a garbage time touchdown. Other than that, he absolutely handled his shit, and he deserves all the props in the world, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's twice this season that he's done that really, really effectively. Did it in that week 2 game as well. I think there was a play. Was it play in that week 2 game where Chase basically had the ball in his hands in the end zone, and I think Brandon Stevens smashed it out or ripped it out or broke that up somehow. So yeah, he definitely deserves his flowers, and I think all those guys at stages across this season, again, similar to the kind of Nelson Aguilar discussion in the wide receiver room, the prospect of adding Arthur Millette, Ronald Darby, these kind of guys didn't feel particularly exciting or sexy at the time. But actually, these guys are stepping up in big moments and against big players and are doing their part. So actually, whether we credit that to them or like we've done in previous weeks, we credit it to Mike Macdonald and the coaching staff or all of the above. No, I think that's a very worthwhile shout out. It's another good performance from a young guy. So yeah, very happy with Brandon Stevens and his performance. So that win is in the bag. That hay is in the barn, as Jerry Sandusky would say, more eloquently and more excitedly than I just did. So let's take our number 1 seeded Baltimore Ravens and shift them forward into week 12, looking at yet another really intriguing game that's got lots of wrinkles and nuance and challenge and opportunity in the Chargers. So from my 30,000 foot view, this feels like an offense stuttering despite Herbert seemingly playing incredibly well. Their last game, he seemed to be putting the ball on an absolute rope straight into people's chests, only for those guys to forget to close their hands. I think as the weeks go on, we're all becoming increasingly pleased that the Chargers took Quentin Johnston over Zay Flowers, leaving him for us in the difference in production that those guys have got. And then on the other side of the ball, their sort of Mark Andrews situation is probably the Bosa injury. He, I think, is clearly out for this game, and so that tandem of Bosa and Khalil Mack that has been having some success and has been causing some havoc won't be there in tandem. But we still have the looming threat of Khalil Mack, who's had games where he's completely dominated and wrecked. So, Ollie, let's come to you again. Where are you looking at this game and thinking it's won or lost against the Chargers?
Well, I think their offense is just to call it high-powered might be overselling it somewhat. I mean, we all know Austin Eckler; he's a slippery little fish, isn't he? But I've seen they're bottom of their conference, but they're the highest point scorers in their conference, which says to me, they're going through a lot on offense, and I'm interested to see how we can shut that down. I don't think we won't, but I really just want to see us do it.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of my fantasy teams, to be bottom yet outscoring. It's the sort of moral victory that doesn't actually come with a victory. Rory, where are you at?
I just want to applaud Ollie on the use of slippery little fish.
That's the unofficial subtitle of this week's video. Is he's a slippery little fish, isn't he? Although I don't know if anyone's seen one of the videos from last week's game. I think the caption on it was something like Austin Eckler running like a fullback. He looked very ploddy. He looked very slow and not the kind of shifty, explosive character that we're used to. I don't know if that's a sign of something. Maybe he's dealing with an issue or something, but he didn't look anything like the kind of dynamic threat that he has before. He looked a bit kind of chugging uphill, but we'll see. Maybe that was a one-off thing. So yeah, it absolutely does feel like one of those teams that can, in theory, score for fun, but seems to have a defense like a sieve. So and Brandon Staley's confirmed he's going to be calling the plays, and he's been the common factor so far. So maybe offensively we'll get some success even without Mark Andrews, Rory.
Yeah, their defence is an absolute horror show. I think they had 1 week where Khalil Mack went absolutely cray-cray with 6 sacks or something like that. But other than that, it's the same old Chargers. They're just so soft. They've got such a soft underbelly. I really think our offence could put on a show. I'm probably going to just throw out a prediction and then I might bow out because I'm absolutely knackered, lads, and I'll leave you to it. But I think Lamar could throw for at least 3 touchdowns, something in the ballpark of about 300 yards. I think we'll give up a few points, probably in the second half. But by then, I think the game will be out of sight. And I think we might see some explosive passing touchdowns to really get the excitement levels juiced. So that's my breakdown. That's the way I see it. I think, hell, it could even be the head coach's last game because I really doubt he's going to see out. Well, I doubt he'll make it into next year. I think I've seen some things on Twitter that the Chargers are not one to move coaches in the middle of the season, but the franchise just is such a dumpster fire. So I am expecting good things at the weekend. I'm going to bow out. I'll probably keep on listening, but I've got things to do. So enjoy your night, lads.
You too, and thank you as always for coming along, Rory. Always appreciated. And if we can see that fabled deep shot touchdown, that would be a glorious moment, I think, for the entire fan base to relax. Adam, where do you see this won and lost, and how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think this is sort of the prime example, really, of we are just better than them, and we just need to beat them. Essentially, I think we'll score a ton of points. You know, Cleo Mack has got that disruptiveness in him, and if he turns up, then he can cause some problems. He can absolutely flush Lamar. He can get to Lamar and take him down. But I just think that we'll probably pound him into the ground to start with, and then I think we'll probably have a little fun in the sort of later part of the game. But this has got all the hallmarks of don't be stupidly dolls. Let's just stick to our tasks. Let's get this job done. Hopefully we can see a little bit more Snoop in the fourth quarter. And let's just get back to 2019 where we take teams apart in the first half. Really rub the salt in the wounds in the third quarter, and then we can all have a nice afternoon off.
So if we push you for some actual numbers, what are we thinking score wise?
Sorry, it's just saying the spaces had ended, and I was like, I can hear you talking. Numbers wise, I'm gonna go with 38-17. I think we will put on a bit of a show this week. And then props wise, I'm going to go with I'm going to say Lamar only sees 3 quarters. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Awesome. I think I love seeing Tyler Huntley in these games. I've not always said that, especially Bengals playoff last season, but seeing Tyler Huntley come in some of these games is such a rewarding feeling because it knows that the job is done and Lamar is sat down, resting and recovering and getting ready for the next week. So any situation in which we see Tyler Huntley this week is hopefully, he says, touching as much wood as he can find around him. Hopefully a good news story. Richard, what about you? Predictions? Where's it won and lost? Score, props, all of those kind of things. Where are you at?
Sorry, can Foz just run me through the pattern before I make my prediction? Uh, right, so we've had a big win. I think that means that we need like a little win. So I think we're going to have a bit of a shootout. I think we're going to win 38-36. Um, predictions. Um, right, Bateman is going to lead the team in receptions, and Harbour is going to wear a jumper with his brother's face on it.
We're going off the rails. we're I know it's hard to think of new and unique props every week, but we are going off the deep end. Though I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. Justice for Jim Harbaugh. Foz, I mean, we've referenced the mythical pattern there. Please don't feel obliged to run us through the whole thing because it is about 5 minutes long. But where does that sort of pattern in the stars put us in your eyes?
So Richard is close. Is we're not due a close win. We're due a close-ish win. So between 7 and 10 points, but not any more than that. So I'm going to go with the 31. No, I'm not. I'm going to go 28-20. That's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go 28-20. I think that what we're going to do is we're basically going to just hover around Keenan Allen all day long, expecting Quentin Johnston to do absolutely nothing except drop hit all of the time. Thanks there, Quentin, for wasting a good portion of my rookie draft picks this year. But I do think he's going to surprise people and he's going to actually take advantage of the fact that nobody's rating him and everybody's worried about Keenan Allen. So I think Quentin Johnston's going to score. Player prop for us. Ooh, I'm going to go with a Hamilton. Hamilton is going to return it on an interception, but not quite get a pick six.
So it then turns into a 3-yard Gus rushing touchdown.
Yeah, pretty much.
his classic, just barrel it over the line.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, if that turns out to be true, then I will continue edging closer and closer to becoming a believer in the pattern. I'm still a skeptic, but the more right you become, the harder it is to deny the power of the pattern.
So the pattern only applies to the fixtures, though it doesn't apply to the props. Just
Of
so we're
course.
sure.
Okay. Of course. Although maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe if you really spent.
Oh no, it doesn't. It definitely does.
Okay. And then Ollie, I know we got your thoughts on sort of where the game's won and lost and those kind of things. But if you were putting numbers on it, where are you seeing it?
I think so I looked looked at all the odds and stuff like that, and most people seem to us having a sort of only a 3.5 point favourite, which I don't agree with myself. I think we're going to win 28-14. Possibly, maybe even getting up to 34. I think for them, Eckler will catch a pass out of the backfield, and for us, Likely and Kolar will combine for 2 touchdowns.
You love to see it. Adam, come on back in.
Yeah, thanks. I've just got a question for Foz. Have you looked at the pattern and where that will have us finishing? And do we win it all?
That sounds like homework.
I might come back to you with that one. I think we're yeah. Let me come back to you with that one. Uh, we're either going to get beaten in a close game by the Steelers or in the AFC Championship game, off the top of my head. But I'll come back to you on that.
I mean, it's a pretty big difference, Foz. I mean,
Keep it positive, Foz.
We'd all take a close-ish loss to the Steelers in Week 18 if it avoids that happening in the AFC Championship game. But I'm sure we all await the predictive power of the pattern with bated breath, especially if I continue to become a believer. Because goodness me, if you've somehow uncovered the script in a kind of Rain Man style, looking at these things, then that's truly unbelievable, and we will be asking for the lottery numbers. I'm fully drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm fully bought in. I think we're going to roll into the bye on an absolute high, and I think when we're talking next week, we're going to be splitting hairs to try and find things that we didn't like about it. We're going to be wishing we had a game next week because we're looking so good. I'll start with my prop because I think in my head it's going to be the day that throws Lamar right back to the front of the MVP conversation. I think he's combining passing and rushing touchdowns for another Jackson 5. I think he's going off. I'll go a step further to say I think it's another perfect passer rating game for him. I think he's going to be that good. I think he's going to be that dialed in, and I can't wait to see it. So I think we romp this. I think we win it 41-17, and I'm not even ashamed about it. I'm a truther. I'm a homer. I don't care. We're winning this game, and we're winning the whole thing. So that's where I'm at. I think it's a big win. Can't wait to watch it. Can't wait to dissect it. Can't wait to talk about it. Hopefully, with as many of you as are able to join us the next time we get together to talk about it. So, open the floor for final thoughts, reflections on anything we've talked about, anything you hoped we would talk about but haven't, or anything else that pops into your head. Foz, come on in.
We're going to get beat by San Francisco. We're going to get beat by the Steelers, and then we're going to go on and win the lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. I think that works. That works for me. I'm happy with that. So, how else do we want to finish? I mean, that's it. So it's official. Mystic Meg has predicted that we're winning the Super Bowl. Here, as we prep for week 12, it's confirmed we're winning the whole thing. So just relax. Enjoy each game. Doesn't matter. It's all sorted. Awesome. What I will let you all know is there is an opportunity, if someone would like it, there is an opportunity to step in and pretend to be me this time next week, because I need to be elsewhere. So unfortunately, I can't make next Tuesday. So if someone fancies themselves as a volunteer stand-in chair host, you've seen how easy it is because of how difficult I managed to make it look. But if anyone fancies it, let me know. I'll put something in the WhatsApp to offer it out as well. But first refusal to anyone here for being so generous with your time and coming along every week. But all it remains to say is we will be here next week. We will talk about the comprehensive win against the Chargers, what that means for the bye and beyond. And with that, I wish you all a very good night, a very good week, and let's go Ravens.
Let's go Ravens.